named Roy Waters with the New York Americans. And he told me one time, he said, you know, that Morincé, he ain't number 7. He's number 777 when he winds up behind the net. He's just a blur.
He was a brilliant player. He was so fast and so quick in his skates that you just felt when he was coming down the ice towards you, he was just hitting the ice about every third stride. He was so fluent in his actions, you know.
Howie would take the puck and he'd just make a quick circle. And I'm telling you, his hair would just fly back. You'd think he was shot out of a shotgun.
Growing up in Stratford, Ontario, Morincé was in a league of his own. As a boy, he'd been badly scalded, and at the time it was doubtful that he would ever walk again, let alone skate. But skate he did, and soon he was so strong and so fast that he was known as the Stratford Streak. But after signing with the Montreal Canadiens, he had second thoughts about leaving home and sent back the check with an apology. However, the Canadiens persisted and brought the young Morincé to Montreal and showed him the town. Soon Howie was in the red, white and blue of the Flying Frenchman, where he was teamed with the great Auriel Joliat.
All my life, or my young life, I had read and heard and people talk about the great Howie Morincé, the Stratford Flash, and how great he was and how, you know, and I said, gee, nobody could be this great, you know, or stand out so much. And then he came on the ice, and I said, gee, what can he do that's so great? And when the game started, you found out.
Down this wing, Morincé takes the pass, he goes in, he shoots, he scores for the Canadiens. Howie Morincé, the old reliable.
He was like a bird. He didn't seem to even touch the ice. He just skittered along above it. He was magnificent. And he, you know, he wasn't very big. He was probably about 170 pounds. And he was quite broad-shouldered, and he had black hair plastered down very tight on his head. But when Howie took off, literally, the crowd in the Montreal Forum left its seats and got up and roared as they watched him flying down the ice. The most noise you ever heard in the Montreal Forum in his day was for a Howie Morincé rush. And of course, if he scored a goal, delirium.
And he was fearless. And he'd wind up behind his own net, and he could skate like the wind. And he didn't care if you had 900-pound defensemen waiting for him. He would bust in there and take the best shot they had.
Again, Morincé knocked over by Red Horner.
For 11 electrifying seasons, Howie Morincé had brought the Montreal fans to their feet. But by 1934, the streak had slowed a step. Where once the fans had cheered him, now they booed. Morincé was sold into the hockey wilderness of Chicago. Yet after only one season, the Blackhawks traded him to the New York Rangers. And then, only months later, Howie came home to Montreal, where he was reunited with his old line mate Auriel Joliat. Life was sweet again, but not for long. In January 1937, in a game against Chicago, Morincé was checked into the boards behind the net by Earl Siebert. Howie's skate stuck in the boards, and Siebert's heavy frame crashed into him. A crack echoed around the Forum. Morincé's leg was broken in 4 places. It was a tragic end to a great career. In the hospital, a tearful Morincé confided to Joliat that without hockey, his life would not be worth living. He died soon after.
Well, oddly enough, the first National League game I played, that was the night that Howie Morincé passed away. That was one of the most stirring things I ever saw in my life, standing on the ice there in Madison Square Garden, and the way that the Gardens toned the lights down and they played taps for Howie.
50,000 people filed past the casket as Howie Morincé lay in state at center ice in the Forum. 250,000 Montrealers, many in tears, lined the funeral route to the cemetery to bid farewell to the greatest hockey star that city, perhaps the country, had ever known.
When my father died, I must say that my mother was devastated. Here she was so in love with her wonderful husband. She was all of 33 years old. So she put my two brothers and myself in the orphanage to be raised by the nuns. And of course that was terribly hard for her, because not only did she just lose a husband, but now she had to place her kids. And then on top of it all, Donald became very sick. He caught pneumonia, and he was rushed to the hospital, and before she knew it, he had died. And having to go through the loss of not only a husband and a son also was more than she could probably take. And she died at a very young age, 41.
He died of a broken heart. He definitely died of a broken heart.